spot among some trees. They came bringing 2 or 3 large bowls or baskets, half full of very good sage and grass seeds that they consumed. All brought their bows and arrows, but with the strings removed from the bows. I think it's really interesting. And one thing that was probably not commonplace knowledge before, but the native peoples, when they encountered the Spanish, didn't just encounter them there and forget about it. They sent word ahead to people further along the trail. So the native peoples actually knew that the Spanish were showing up in many cases, and this may be the case here. Why else would they unstring their bows? Maybe they knew they were coming and they felt that this was something they wanted to do as part of their welcoming. And you guys can talk about this as you did on Sunday, about the welcoming nature of what was being done here. I heard a comedian recently who was talking about the fact that nobody has company anymore. Remember that? We had company coming over, you have cake. The cake was for the company, and then you got the lousy stuff on the side when you were kids. It was a great routine, but it reminded me of that. They welcomed company as part of their cultural traditions. All right, in time, their chief bore strings of shell beads of the sort that they use. And on reaching the camp, they threw 3 handfuls of those beads at each of us. So we can maybe know what that is about, too. What was the reason for that? Yeah, exactly. And you can talk about that. Some of the heathens came up smoking upon Indian pipes made of baked clay, and they blew 3 mouthfuls of smoke into the air towards each one of us. Then their chief made a speech, and they all sat down with us. The captain and myself gave them tobacco, and he gave them our own kind of beads, and accepted the sage, which is a gruel, as Crespi described it, for meals, from them, and gave us a share of it for refreshment. And very delicious sage it is for that purpose. I haven't enjoyed it many times. Now again, they didn't have their supplies because that ship was lost in the ocean in Baja California. So they needed the refreshment. They needed the sustenance. They would not have survived, as Matt indicated, without that. Now they went further out to the west, and our captain told me, Crespi said, that when they scouted here in a ravine about half a league to the westward, they came upon about 40 springs of pitch or tar, boiling in great surges up out of the ground, and saw very large swamps of this tar, enough to have caulked many ships with. So we know what that is, right? The La Brea tar pits, which is pretty awesome. Crespi said he wanted to go see it, and Portola said he could not. They had other things to worry about, to do, so they had to move on from there. We felt 4 quakes at dawn today. There have been 14, very persistent and strong, though not long-lasting, overall in the trip so far. And he says, and now that we have learned about these pitch springs here, we attribute the cause to them. So guys, when the big one comes, it's the La Brea tar pits' fault. Don't forget that. All right, August 3rd, they go further to the west. They meet other native peoples. They greet them. There is a mention also of some springs that they found as they go out. One was called El Ojo de Agua de los Alisos de San Esteban, the St. Stephen Sycamore Spring. And of course, there are a lot of these springs. You got the Santa Monica Mountains. Water is coming down into the plains. And you have that.
Yeah, Centennial over there too. That's a natural spring.
Right, right. And I think out by the VA also,
yeah.
In that area, Sawtell,
University High.
University High School was also the spot of one of these. A low bare range follows alongside us to the right of this spot, and another lower one to the left. So to the right, Santa Monica Mountains. What's to the left? Baldwin Hills, probably, I'm guessing. Yeah, out towards Ladera Heights and all that, as they're making their way westwards. This place must be over a league in extent, north and south, with very grass-grown soil that cannot be bettered. Now, I keep saying that as he's moving along. Can't get better than this. It does. This plain continues on westward, veering southwestward. How far? Who can say? Well, probably down to Palos Verdes Peninsula, right? A grand spot for a good-sized settlement. Now, he doesn't talk about a mission there. He's talking about a settlement. While we were seated in the shade of the sycamores here, enjoying the beauty of this spring, which is very fresh, pure water, we felt a strong quake lasting less than a Hail Mary. Now, he did this back at Santa River. It's like, oh, it's about as much as a rosary and 2 Hail Marys. That's how he measures it.
Doesn't a Hail Mary speed up during an earthquake?
Well, if you're Doug Flutie, playing for Boston College in 1986, it lasted a long time waiting for that pass to land. And again, all of the plains, many great antelopes and many hares, right, in this area. And they continue on from San Esteban, and they're heading out further westward. The sea can be made out about 1.5 leagues away, roughly 4 or 5 miles, somewhere in that direction. And they see a spring belonging to that place that flows in this direction along the foot of the small range and empties into the sea. Out towards Bayona, exactly where the LA River at that time emptied out. It did until 1825 when there was a flood that moved it to the south. The two springs of the plain of San Rogerio, St. Rogerius, this is Westwood, guys, right about where UCLA is located today. The scouts went further west to explore, and they say there is no way past the range falling steep to the sea. What's that? Pacific Palisades. They went out to the ocean, looked to the right, nope, nowhere to go there. So it's time to find somewhere else to go. And he says, but in one of those directions that the scouts have been looking at, we shall have to go in whatever way God shall assist us in doing. And that means we're going to have to find Sepulveda Pass. So that's August 5th, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which is kind of late for them. Usually they left in the morning. I guess they were enjoying the cool breezes in the springs and all that sort of thing. A northward course through the mountains, entering through a narrow little hollow. When they said hollow, they meant canyons typically. We went over a high pass and thence down to a very large valley, all burnt off by the heathens. Again, the land management. At a full 3 hours, about 3 leagues, we set up camp beneath a large light oak upon the south side of the valley here, close to a very large pool of very pure water. Hot water, by the way. And we're talking about Los Encinos Historic Park, right? And Sukangna would be the native name for that. Where we came upon 2 large villages of very fine, well-behaved, and very friendly heathens. So again, Crispy's always happy when the native peoples come out and are very kind of welcoming to him. And about 200 souls. And one of the things pointed out on our presentations over the weekend is by Phil Brigandy, who's an Orange County historian, is that California's density of native people was greater than almost all the rest of North America. So this is an interesting thing to consider, is how many people came out. 200 souls, men, women, and children, they all stood waiting with their bowls full of gruel and sage refreshment. Well, why were they waiting? They had gotten news already from Yangnao probably. Hey, the Spaniards are coming. Welcome them and provide them food, because they have no supplies because they didn't know how to navigate the ocean to get up here, which the native people probably knew how to do pretty well, right? And so they got their provisions there. Vast numbers of basketfuls of servings of very good, well-flavored gruel and sage, and all of that. Now, what is this valley? A large valley that must be not less than 6 leagues in length from east to west. Its width from north to south is not under 3 leagues. All of it very good, very grass-grown soil, though most of it had been burnt off. Surprise, surprise. Many patches, however, had not been where grass still showed. The pool I spoke of at Encino, a large one with turtles in it. That's interesting. It is a very hot water, very good and pure, however, once it is cooled. And he talks about a naranja. And I lived on a street called La Naranja as a kid, never knew what that meant. Now I know. Another watering place is about 3 leagues to eastward. So you're talking probably 7.5, 8 miles back towards Cahuenga Pass, I imagine. A swamp and a hollow belonging to this valley where a village was seen. 3 leagues off to the northwest is another one, because the scouts are checking for water. A naranja of running water with sycamores, willows, and live oaks. Another line to northward, which is Van Norman Reservoir area, up what's that, Granada Hills location. Walnut trees, prickly pear, sage. I called it the Valley of Santa Catalina de Bologna, St. Catherine of Bologna. So if you live in the San Fernando Valley, that could have been the Santa Catalina instead of San Fernando. Now, interestingly, when they laid by on August 6th, the chiefs of these villages here took great measures and sent 4 heathens with the scouts to show them the watering place they spoke of. That's exactly what Matt was talking about. They need the help of the native peoples if they're going to get out, because the valley was fenced in by high mountains and there's no way along the seashore. They're stuck. They don't know where to go. And without the help of the native peoples, well, they would have died probably in north of San Diego. They wouldn't have known where to go. We began to meet with regular houses here, and you were talking about underground. This is amazing. They have some underground ones that are very large, being like a sort of portico within, with a small doorway like a chimney hole, through which they go in and out to protect themselves from the cold. Crespi goes on to say their lives are governed a bit. All of our lives are governed a bit, right? There being in all of the villages 3 or 4 chiefs, with one chief who is head of all the others and gives them orders, as they do to the rest of the people. Here also, we begin to see very well-carven wooden flutes that they play on. We understand from these heathens that they can have only a single wife, with the exception of 2 of their chiefs who have 2. To our astonishment, they have repeatedly brought us a vast number of basketfuls of gruel and sage and so forth. Then Crespi says, up country, pointing northeastward, there were people like us, pointing to the soldiers with guns, swords, and horses, pointing to their mounts. Because again, the natives had never seen a horse before, or mules. And there were 3 fathers, like ourselves, pointing to our habits, the priests, that 2 or 3 of themselves had been there, that it was reached in 13 days' travel from sunrise to sunset. There was a sea close by. All right? Obviously, the Native peoples had a lot of interaction with Native peoples from all over the American West as we now know it, and others too. And maybe some Spaniards had had some contact. In fact, when they were at Santa Ana River, they were shown by the natives iron materials. Where else would those have come from? Maybe from New Mexico and Arizona is what Crespi had said. In fact, he says here that a great many people from this land that was being pointed out by the Indians had come on horseback to their country and had returned. Whether this is New Mexico or not, who can say? And he goes on to talk about very red or fair hair among some of the native peoples. And among them all, my heart went out to one little girl, daughter of the head chief, some 6 years old. She wore skirts of very fine, handsome deerskin, reaching from waist to ankles, with a big flounce, again, his understanding, made of the same deerskin all about beneath and at the waist, and a belt of very small shell beads. Portola would not have talked about that. Costanzo would not have talked about that. Crespi did. And whether he was accurate or not, at least we had some written description, and then we can learn from the native peoples more about that. Now I'll wrap up here by mentioning on August 7th, they left the valley. 3 full hours, 3 leagues, they went up a hollow upon the north of this valley, about a half a league before the mountains and lie beyond it. You're basically getting up into the passes that lead to Santa Clarita and over to Saugus and those areas. And they have good water, and water enough for a town. And this is again in the Van Norman Reservoir area, northeastern part of the San Fernando Valley. I was unable to be sure whether it could be irrigated, but judged that it might. And if it was worked upon in that way, you could have a lot of water for developing this town. All right, and then on August 8th, they climb a high pass to get down a long descent, and that leads them into the Saugus area. So hopefully you've got a pretty good idea of what they were experiencing as they went from the San Gabriel Valley through Los Angeles and out into the San Fernando Valley.